Guys, in last night's co-main event, Alexa Grasso dominated Maycee Barber in what was a very entertaining fight. Nick and I are talking about that and what's next for the Mexican superstar right now. What's up, Barnhill family? Welcome back to the channel.
Yo.
So, Nick, we had what ended up being a great fight in the co-main event slot last night. You know, this being a pay-per-view card and looking at the depth of the card itself, you know, obviously you had the return of Kelvin Gastelum on there. He was able to get a big win. But the card in general, aside from the main event, Usman and Burns, wasn't anything that would really blow your hair back as a UFC pay-per-view. But sometimes when that happens, it ends up being a really great card and there's multiple good fights on it. Grasso versus Barber was no exception. I think Alexa Grasso is really coming into her own here and showing that she's a rising star as far as female mixed martial artists go. She took on the very young, very ambitious Maycee Barber. You know, Maycee is famous for saying that she was going to be the youngest ever champion, edging out John Jones. Now with a couple of losses, that looks a lot less realistic than it did before. What were your thoughts on the fight?
It seemed like, you know, a bit of an underwhelming co-main event for a pay-per-view, but like you said, the fight delivered. It was an entertaining fight from start to finish, and Alexa Grasso looked really good. I think she showed a lot of adversity because she won the first two rounds, and I don't think she won the third round. I know the strikes were way lopsided in Maycee Barber's favor for the third round, but she did enough in the first two to get her hand raised, and she's looked really good after moving to 125, 2-0, which is the first time she's had a streak, a win streak in the UFC. So it's safe to say 125 is her home.
Yeah, I think Alexa Grasso's definitely found her home at 125, and I think she's here to stay. Her boxing looked really crisp last night. You know, she's from Guadalajara. You know, there's another great boxer from Guadalajara by the name of Canelo Alvarez. Maybe you guys have heard of him. Yeah, but a lot of
water.
Yeah, they absolutely churn out fantastic boxers out of Mexico, and they always have. What really surprised me and what I was really impressed by was Grasso's technical skill on the ground and even advancing position and shooting for submissions there. I believe it was in the second round. She looked very comfortable on the ground. She looked like she was not only able to hold her own, and, you know, a lot of fighters, their main goal, because they're strikers, especially strikers, their goal is to work enough takedown defense and be familiar enough with jiu-jitsu techniques and position to effectively negate that and get up. Grasso actually went a step further and was attempting some offense of her own on the ground, which I thought showed significant improvement. I think the thing here with Maycee Barber is she is very young, she is very ambitious, but when you put her against top-level opposition like Alexa Grasso, she shows that she lacks a little bit in technical skill to be able to compete with the women at the top. She's very powerful, she's very heavy-handed, she's not afraid of anybody, and she's willing to go in there and throw big shots. But when you look at the statistics of the fight, Grasso landed double the percentage of significant shots than Barber. She landed almost 48% to Barber's like 25 or 26% of significant shots. And a lot of them were just kind of Barber swinging for the fences and Grasso keeping herself safe and firing back with excellent counter shots. So I think Maycee Barber, we're witnessing a young fighter with a lot of potential who is still a bit green and very raw in her technical abilities.
Yeah, I think she's got a long way to go. Anybody that's 23 or 22 years old has a long way to go as far as evolving as a human, progressing. Like, you know, her brain isn't fully developed yet, so she's not as smart of a person or a fighter that she will become over the next 5 to 10 years. But you know, when you're an 8-0 fighter, a young fighter, and you feel like this little aura of invincibility around you, you begin to think like, maybe I can become the champ. Maybe the dates work out where I could potentially become the youngest champion and beat John Jones's record. And that one thing we realize is it's very hard to beat John Jones at anything when it comes to this sport. Not just the punches and the kicks while you're in the octagon with him, but beating some of his records is also very, very difficult. Maycee Barber, unfortunately, won't be beating John Jones's record, but that doesn't mean she won't ever be a UFC champion. She just won't be the youngest UFC champion, sort of like what we saw with Edmund Shabazi, and he's just not going to make it there, but he will make it eventually. Maycee, it seems like she realizes now that she has a lot more to work on, and I feel like taking this that opportunity away from her will help her get on a more marathon style approach down the path of martial artists than the sprint, which is the sprint is cool. Don't get me wrong. If you're able to continue to win, sure, you deserve a title shot, but the level of opposition is going to continue to get harder and harder for you. And when you're 8-0 in the 8-0, and some of those fights have been in the UFC, and you're saying, okay, 2 or 3 more wins, and the UFC is kind of in agreement that I'll get a shot at Valentina for the title. It's only going to get harder and harder from there, and we're starting to see that when they give her really tough opponents like Alexa Grasso, it's just too much for her to handle.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, it's a marathon. You kind of have to settle in, and you have to understand where you are in any given season of your career, and she's still in the very early stages, the infancy of her career. The reality of the matter is she got beat up by Alexa Grasso. If she were to be in there with Valentina, she would get knocked out by Valentina. So it's not time yet for her to be there, and that's okay. She's got to go work on her technical skill. She obviously throws with a lot of power, and she's got a lot of heart, 2 things that you can't teach. But one thing that I saw she was doing in the fight that I said she's got to correct that is she wastes a ton of unnecessary energy. I mean, she's almost looks like she's shadow boxing at times because she's a good 5 feet of separation between her and Grasso, and she's throwing 1s and 2s as if she's in range to land. And anybody watching that, even a novice that knows nothing about fighting, knows that person is nowhere near in the vicinity that they need to be to land a punch.
Yeah.
You can throw a jab out there to feel where your range is and range find and look for your power shots. But some of these fighters have a tendency to do that. And I don't know if it's just kind of a weird tick or tendency that they have, or if it's something that they're being taught, but they should definitely unlearn that and unteach that, because it just wastes energy. I mean, it's like she's doing a hard round of shadow boxing, and it's totally ineffective. It brings down the percent. That's a strike. Every time she does that, that's a strike not landed. And obviously the judges aren't sitting there counting. But when you look at the overall stats at the end of a fight, it doesn't look good. She's got to learn to use her energy a bit more wisely and learn how to find her range a little bit better, because she was throwing huge overhands just way out of range. And it's like that expends a lot of energy. Punching in general expends a lot of energy. If you connect, punching and missing and then having to reset yourself, that expends even more energy. And I think Maycee Barber made a big mistake by doing that last night.
Yeah, I think you're right. She's basically shadow boxing in the middle of a fight, which is very hard to do. It's exhausting. And, when you're watching something like that happen, you realize then and there that what she's trying to do is outpace and overwhelm her opponent, but that doesn't work at the high levels. You see somebody moving like a whirling dervish in front of you, that might seem scary to somebody that doesn't know fighting or doesn't know what they're doing, but somebody that's been in there before, that knows where the danger zones are and where, if they're in and out of range, that doesn't bother them at all. They're more than happy to just stand and hang out there and not worry about what this person's doing. They could be doing backflips. If they're 5 feet away, it really doesn't matter. And it's not going to take anything from you. So you just stay safe. You don't really have to do anything. And Maycee Barber, while I like the enthusiasm, while I like the action that she is bringing and that she has in her style, she doesn't need to do all of that while she's that far out of range. Right. Now, if she moves like that while she's in the danger zone, that's another thing. You need to be, very fluid with your motions, your head movement and all that stuff, your punches, when you're in the danger zone. But when you're 5 feet away from your opponent, it really doesn't make a lot of sense, and it will tire you out. Yeah,
and it doesn't matter whether it's Maycee Barber or it's Francis Ngannou. If you're 10 feet away from them, they can't hurt you. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's just a waste of energy. It's kind of, and any judge who's worth their salt can look at that and know that that's not aggression, that's not octagon control, that's not significant striking. That's just simply a fighter that's really kind of doing something that's ineffective and counterproductive to the goal.
People see Khabib and other fighters like that, and they go, "Oh, well, that person's got really good pressure." And I think some people misunderstand what pressure is, and it's not just being really like busy and floating around like a bee, like a million miles an hour. It's putting that pressure on somebody. You can walk like a zombie. Korean Zombie has great pressure, but he doesn't zip and zap around. You know, he walks forward. If Maycee Barber were to take some of those steps away and some of that bouncing around away and just close the distance, it would work better for her as far as pressure goes. But she'll live and she'll learn, and I think that, you know, now that she's 8-2, she's going to settle into being a contender, and she won't have to, like I said, sprint. She won't have to take her skills that she's got as a young 22-year-old and try to sprint to the finish line, which is the championship bout.
With a self-created deadline that she imposed on herself.
Right, which is a great thing to shoot for, and props to her. It was a great piece of marketing that she was getting behind and kind of forced the UFC's hand into giving her that chance. I do believe if she would have won her fight against Roxanne Modafferi and her fight against Alexa Grasso, that she'd be one more fight away from a title shot.
Sure.
But, you know, now she's going to settle in. She doesn't have to just worry about picking up the tools that she's got and maybe picking up a little bit here and there in the 2 and 3 month training camps that she's got on her way to a championship. Now she can settle in, learn, take 6 months if she needs, and just go learn and not worry about the deadline. And she'll become a much more evolved martial artist doing that.
I think you're right, and I think we still have a long way to go before we see the best of Maycee Barber. And like you said, Edmund Shabazian's a great example. She might very well be a champion one day, but at a more realistic age, 26, 27. As she comes into her own, she develops a technical skill. You know, that kind of hopping around busy style, when you think of somebody like a TJ Dillashaw, they utilize that extremely well. They'll start from way out of range, but by the time the combination's done, they're right up in your grill.
Right.
That's where she needs to kind of refine that a little bit. She has tendencies, and they can be used and tweaked and refined to be more effective.
Yeah, and I think she, you know, if she's looking at her fight name, I don't think she needs to worry about not being the future just because she stumbled a couple of times. I think her fight name in her mind was the present. She wanted to be the present of the division, the present of the UFC. But she still has plenty of time to become the future of the UFC. And I do believe she's going to be a problem for a lot of girls in the UFC around 125 and 135 for many years to come, which is in the future. So she's not off on her fight name.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right in that. She just kind of coincidentally, her fight name is more fitting now than ever.
Right.
She is the future, not the present. Yeah. Talking about a fighter that seems to be the present, Alexa Grasso looks like a contender now at 125, and in a division where there's not a lot of contenders. You know, you have your Lauren Murphys, H-Town represent.
Yeah.
You have your Joanne Calderwood. Maybe they're going to make Lauren Murphy versus JoJo Calderwood. Who knows? And now you've inserted Alexa Grasso into that conversation. There's really not a whole lot of depth at 125. And then you have Valentina, who's been so dominant for so long. But Alexa Grasso, if you look at people who could potentially challenge Valentina, and I know I'm personally very biased because we know Lauren Murphy. We train with her. We train at the same gym, so I think she could pose a great threat. But just being open and candid, I think Alexa Grasso could also pose a great challenge for Valentina as well, because she's got great striking, she's got great boxing, and she's also got that Mexican chin. She inherited that. She's never been knocked out.
Yeah.
And she ate some big shots from Maycee Barber. I'm not saying that if they made the Grasso versus Valentina fight today that I would pick Grasso. No. Quite the opposite. I would pick Valentina. But there is something interesting there that I would be interested in seeing that fight at some point in the future.
Yeah, and if she can string together a few more wins, I think she has the potential to be marketed well by the UFC. She's, got the star power, got the skills, got all the things that she needs to kind of get pushed into the top contenders range. You got Jessica Andrade kind of coming in, and she's kind of cutting the line. I guess I don't really find that to be the best option. I do think you have to look at merit, and when there's a division where there's not a ton of star power as far as huge names, you got to start going off merit. There's not some mega star like a Ronda Rousey sitting in the top 5, top 10 of the 125 division. So you got to go off somebody who's got the most wins. I know it's biased, but it's also, if we're going off merit, Lauren Murphy deserves that. She's on a 4-fight win streak. I think if Alexa Grasso can win 2 more fights, she'll be on a 4-fight win streak as well. And there's nobody else in the division doing that. And I think she will find herself towards the top of the division in about a year or so.
I think you're right. Well, guys, what did you think about Alexa Grasso's performance last night? Is she here to stay? Is she going to be a contender? Will she get the belt at 125? Please let us know in the comments. And what does the future hold for the future Maycee Barber? Thanks so much for watching, guys. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and check us out on audio in the car ride when you're listening to podcasts. Have a great day.
Peace.